Righto, I'll kick off. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name's Rachel Boyle, I'm the Executive Director at the New Zealand Chamber in Singapore. With me today, I've got Todd Welling, who's the founder and the group CEO, and also Yeston Keys, Singapore MD of Overdose. Overdose is a digital commerce anti-agency agency. Quite a mouthful, but they're all about helping businesses grow their digital channels. Overdose is a real New Zealand success story. They were set up in 2016 and they've now got offices in Auckland, New York, Melbourne, Sydney, London, the Ukraine and Singapore. So today Todd is going to take us through their founder mindset, which defines the Overdose attitude and also how they approach growth and scaling with agility. If you've got any questions during the session, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type your question in here and we'll save them all for a Q&A session at the end. But right now I'll hand over to Todd.
G'day guys, thank you for inviting us into your offices, bedrooms, kitchens, spare rooms in this strange COVID times. I am talking to you from New Zealand, so we're COVID free. So we won the World Cup of COVID and things are starting to return to normal here. What I wanted to do today was give you a little bit of a walkthrough of some of the learnings of not just myself, but our very broad global leadership team. And this isn't how to start a digital agency. This isn't how to grow an e-commerce business. This is much more a generic view on what it means to especially work in a service-based industry. You know, essentially Overdose is a consultancy in what we do. And these are learnings of growing a team from 2 founders out to, we're just over 200 staff now in 4 years. And, we plan to double the size of that business again in the next 2 years. So there's some pieces in here. These are our personal views and thoughts on the world. By no means are these a manifesto. And hopefully there's some value in this. I will distribute this deck. It's around about 14 slides and fire this out so the chamber can share this deck and hopefully you'll find some value in there. Now, hopefully my screen share is working. So I originally wrote this deck for a managing director's offsite. So we were bringing all of our MDs together globally. Everyone flew into Auckland just pre-Christmas last year. And we'd been through a very interesting growth phase of where we had started as a very disruptive insurgent style business that was fundamentally changing the shape of an industry for good. Now, what we had found was that as we had scaled through size, we'd started to become what we'd set out to break. And a lot of the facets and systems and structure and processes and culture started to lean away from our startup hustle mindset and started to, and I felt they were starting to gravitate towards a corporate space. So this deck was actually originally written for my MDs, and we have 6 or 7 MDs around the country who run their locations. One of them being Yeston, who heads up our Southeast Asian business. Off the back of that, we actually found that this was a mindset that just didn't need to be situated with a leader. And we now actually present this to all of our staff that come into the business. And we view that the founder's mindset is a set of attitudes that actually embody everyone through the whole organization. So there's about 12 or 13 on here. I'll rattle through them relatively quickly because I'd love to open up for questions, and I find that leads to some much more actionable insights for everybody. So number 1, insurgency. This is a word that we found represented ourselves better than being disruptive or anti-agency. The word insurgency to us was about redefining an industry. Now, we see a lot of startups that especially come into a service space that are either trying to be cheaper, faster, or better. We decided to very much move away from that, and we focus on the word different a lot more than sitting in any of those core triangle pieces. So different for me as a founder is I am always trying to have a combination of horizons. So I've got my head in the weeds and I'm looking at the details and I'm, staring at my P&L every day. I'm then looking at the mid-market economics of how each of my offices are performing. I then like to have a very holistic helicopter view over where the rest of the market is heading towards. So surprisingly, we've spent very, very little time looking at our in our space. And the reason for that was that the more we started doing this, a young organization, there was psychologically their positioning was rubbing off onto who we were. And we found ourselves stop being different and started actually comparing ourselves. So it's like, right, let's stop comparing ourselves and instead build out a compelling proposition. So for us, the concept is being different, it's being compelling, and that is a true hook. So when someone thinks of your brand in your niche, your vertical, there is a true, almost a pirate underdog attitude towards that business where you stand out and it's Jesus, those guys are a bit kooky, they're a bit out there. And that worked so well for us when we were building the organization from the ground up, because we came in as the wild card into all these RFPs. And then when we demonstrated our agility and our different thinking, it allowed us to enter into that space. Now, we still see today, everyone tries to either undercut us, we'll do it cheaper, we'll do it faster, but we've never changed our philosophy in that there is an overdose way of doing things, and that is a compelling enough cause that we don't necessarily have to base our proposition on that normal triangle, which tends to lean towards price as well. The second one, which was really big for us as we were going through that growth curve, was the concept of retention before sales. Now, especially for those working in a sales or a scale-up startup environment, the attraction to the shiny net new growth can become quite intoxicating. And what we found was that we fell into that trap and we were focused on growth by all possible measures. And we started dropping our service standards on our existing clients. Now, if you look through the economics of this, we believe it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every client you lose, you need to win 3 back. Okay, so essentially one of them is to cover the cost of the client that has walked away from your business. The second one is to cover the cost of the person actually hunting for that new piece of work. And symptomatically, there would always be a couple of months gap, and you've obviously got the cash flow that goes with that. And then thirdly, you need to recover a third client to cover the reputational loss, because nobody leaves your organization or your service-based industry still being excited by the prospect of them working for you. And I can't overestimate the value of the personal networks and people talking to each other. I would say we didn't do any marketing for our business for about the first 3 years, and all of our growth came through reputational bias. Okay, so our only asset as a service-based business, and it is literally our only asset, is reputation. We are a consultant service, the same as an accountant or a lawyer firm, and reputation is all we own. So that value of reputation is directly correlated towards retention. Okay, so I think if there's one takeaway from this slide, it's retention drives reputation. And when you have clients that are staying with you for multiple years, that actually builds up the ethereal value in brand, which is then CEO to CEO at the wine bar, at the golf course. Who are these guys you've been using for the last 2 years? Who actually accelerated that growth for you? So this was a mind shift change for us to make sure that we always had our eyes on servicing what we have already acquired and ensuring that we are over delivering in that space. Okay, another space which I saw happening very acutely in scale up businesses is everyone was using this keyword of empathy. We're client centric. We are, using these tactical empathy, left side of the brain, right side of the brain terms. Now, the actual context of the word empathy is not sympathy. Okay, so what tends to happen there is that people associate empathy with I sympathize with your position. That is not what empathy is in business. Okay, empathy is the capability to view a problem, a scenario, through the lens of your client or the client's client. In our case, that's people buying things off of websites. So I coach this into all of my team, and there's about a half an hour process we go through here of what we call tactical empathy. And tactical empathy is viewing it through another's context to derive value for yourself so that you can offer back the correct solutions. Now, that's not just a sales tactic, that's a service tactic as well, in that we are delivering solutions which are relevant and applicable, right-sized for our clientele. So we often see this wrong, that empathy equals sympathy. It's not the case. And if you go too far down that line, and the empathy leads into an emotional state and not a tactical state, you tend to sink with their ship at the same time. And that gets you into those problems in a service-based industry. And I'm sure there's people on the line here that have, let those invoices roll out to 30, 60, 90 days because the business is struggling, but you feel that you are sympathetic to their business and you keep working with them. What you're actually doing is you're digging your hole with them. So make sure that empathy is a business strategy and not something where you have immediately tied your business outcomes to your clientele's business outcomes. There's a coalescence that happens in there, but you don't want to be directly correlated in there. And again, this is learned from mistakes. We've done that. We've let clients run out to 3-6 months worth of unpaid invoicing due to no fault of our own. They've then gone into some kind of liquidation, and we've left ourselves in a 6-figure hole there as well. Okay, the next one, one that I'm not particularly good at is shutting up. I cannot stress enough that in a service-based industry, listening is your absolute power. Okay, listening drives that tactical empathy. Now, we see a lot of guys especially in the agency land where we come from, which is this heavy sales environment where they're listening to respond with a smart answer. Okay, so what we try to drive is this listening to understand. Okay, now I can tell you firsthand that dramatic pauses are the best way to get your clientele, your prospects to overshare. If you drop a deliberate pause for 5 to 10 seconds into that conversation, it derives absolute power. There is this awkwardness, and they will start giving you more information. So saying less can get you to a much stronger place. Okay, next one. This is very Overdose, very un-Singaporean. I'm going to swear and say that we focus on get shit done. Our business operates in digital commerce. We're a always on. Websites don't turn themselves off. There's something to be doing every day. So we have a bias to action. Now, my belief that any true entrepreneur, true founder, has this belligerent delivery-focused mindset, okay, and a general dislike of bureaucracy. So the majority of my leadership team here are guys that fell out of corporate systems. I used to work for UBS in Singapore and Morgan Stanley over in London and New York. I thought that my career was my future. What I learned was that I didn't want to do that for another 30, 40, 50 years because I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And just as an aside, the day I chose to become an entrepreneur, I was sitting in Suntec City working for UBS. They had flown over their Swiss Six Sigma consultants, and they booked a meeting, which was about how do you plan meetings to book meetings. And that was the day when I decided I can't live with this bullshit because I just want to make things happen. So this is more of a personal value to me, which is just deliver. We love to inflect change. We love to add value to our clientele. I believe that the ability to move quickly and break procrastination is one of the strongest strengths of any founder and any leader. So decisiveness of action, whether it's a great, middling, or terrible call, the focus on always moving fast, it allows you to jump the market. It gives you a ability to iterate through multiple different opportunities in front of you. Now, what I don't agree with, and this is a Gary Vaynerchuk kind of attitude, is this fail fast attitude. Okay, so there's a lot of hype in the market, and being an entrepreneur is cool now, right? It was crazy when I first started on this journey, but being an entrepreneur is cool. With that concept of fail fast, my issue with this is that it has glamorized failure. Okay, so failing fast as a concept is actually very valid and very correct, which is see the problems in front of you and make a judgment call whether or not you keep digging that hole. Unfortunately, what's happened through there is that the fail fast attitude, with that glamorization of it's okay to fail, and you see these young Silicon Valley kids on LinkedIn where they're on their fourth startup by the time they're 26. That's not someone I'm kind of keen to invest in. So I think the fail fast concept is allowing and gratifying the giving up. So I think there needs to be a amount of tolerance which is built into the entrepreneurialism, and also the respect of funds and investment when it's coming into your business. I actually, over the last 2 years, I personally stopped in investing in startups because I'd seen this firsthand, where I'd invested in a couple of startups and they had chosen that they'd failed and were actually celebrating that they'd failed because they had a better pivot and they were moving on to the next thing. So bias to action, yes, but also some resilience is incredibly important there as well. Okay, number 6, again, a personal failing of myself. This to me is the key of a really good manager, and this is a manager of your own staff, and this is also a management of any relationship. And this goes down to parenting, husbands, wives, clientele, staff, the cleaner, the secretary, and it's continuity. So what we found as we were scaling our business was we started in this mindset of continual over delivery, and we were delivering 12s and 13s out of 10. Now, what we found as we scaled our business, we didn't have the capability to deliver that. And then we dropped down to sort of like a solid 8. Now, there was an effective, 5-point gap there in how we dropped down, although we were still delivering a fantastic high value, high ROI service. And what we had inadvertently created was a little bit of a roller coaster. And this still happens in our organization today, and is stereotypical of any service-based business, where you tend to overservice in the early stages of that relationship. And I think that's human nature as well. When you first start dating, there's lots of gifts and there's lots of flowers. 12 years after being married, I still struggle to remember my anniversary and to bring flowers for the wife and make sure that you keep saying thank you. So the concept of continuity in a business context here is both having continuity of service relationships and also internalized relationships. And it's setting clear and manageable expectations and setting your value prop up very, very early through that relationship. Now, the core value here is actually longevity and retention, which goes back to one of the earlier conversations, which is that continuity drives retention, okay, which then has reputation. So if you have set out very early, this is good value, what I'm giving you. I'm not giving you exceptional value where I'm losing money. I'm not allowing you to break even, and I'm certainly not robbing you blind, but I'm giving you great value through this process. Then you have set up the benchmark for a very long-term relationship through there. Now, this has become key to us, is that a lot of our growth is based on retention, which is that we aren't losing clients and we aren't burning. We're lucky that we have around about a 95% retention rate in our business. And everyone needs that continuity of both your own personal performance, and that then drives their personal performance as well. I think that then also leads into some of the management techniques of when you've had that shit morning, when you've been stuck in traffic, when you've had an argument with the wife, that you don't take that into the next meeting, the next appointment. So I've tried to develop myself in having this deep breath, reset. This is a fresh start every hour that every meeting goes into. Okay, next one, hire smart. So this is pretty obvious in many circumstances, but this is a lot of our success into how we grew our business as well. I see this actually, you know, having lived in Singapore for 2 years, and then having lived back in New Zealand now for the last 12 years, there is symptomatically different management styles that exist both culturally through that process. We deliberately went out and recruited relatively maverick people. They didn't have the best CVs for the jobs, but they had that spark. They had that bit of energy. And most importantly, they really fundamentally wanted the opportunity that we gave them. So with that want, with that desire, with that ambition, you can do so much more with that than you can with just having the degree and the MBA and someone looking for the next stepping stone through their career. So we have a belief system here that you can have a career as long as you like in Overdose. And we will bring to you opportunities through additional headroom in your role, moving into other departments, moving geographically through there. But the most important part is that it's your responsibility to go and get it. So we will lead you out into this deep water. We will let you go as deep as you feel you can go. And we will let you do that autonomously. What we will then do is we'll be ready with the life ring, okay? So the last thing we want to do, and we have done this inadvertently, is we have pushed amazing members of staff too far, too hard, too fast, and come very close to burning some of those guys out. So what we've symptomatically done is accelerated, you know, 5-10 years of career into a 2-year window, but you've got to know when to be able to pull them back in as well. So the core parts of that for me is defaulting to trust. Okay, so when anyone comes to work with us, they'll get a little pep talk of go get it, Tiger, run for the wind, grab everything that you possibly can. And by default, we will trust you to do an exceptional job. You do not need to earn our trust. And it's kind of quite Simon Sinek in one way, but as leadership teams, we fundamentally believe that we work for our staff and not vice versa. And what keeps me up at night is actually more managing the careers and the livelihood of the 200 people that work for me, because I now have an incumbent responsibility to make their lives better as well. Okay, number 8, this is quite particular to Overdose, won't be very particular to all industries. I believe that process is the enemy of culture, okay? So particularly in an agency landscape, we tend to get stuck into project management, ticketing systems. Again, when I lived in and worked in a tech position in Singapore, we would build a frontline help desk, then a second level support and a third level support. And as a customer, you had to fight to get through those layers. Now, what it did was it bred some fantastic efficiency into the business, but it annoyed and frustrated the consumers by no end. What I also discovered through that process is that when you tie somebody's role into a process, they fundamentally live inside that box. And then that means, we're not doing this. We're not leading them out to deep water. We're not showing them boundless opportunities. What we're actually doing is constraining them and saying, when you see this ticket, you answer that, and that's what you do. That's your job. Now, I believe that that disengages. It stops the free thinking of talent. And I would much rather have a hyper engaged team with a broken process than have a broken team that wasn't infused and dynamic and waking up every day pumped to come to work and service their clients. Now, that being said, we still have to be efficient. We still have to deliver EBITDA. We still have to be a good business. We still have to manage our cash flows. So we came up with this concept of saying, let's have systems and not processes. So systems facilitate us. They augment what we do, and it gives us a structure and a blueprint of how we operate. But it's a guideline. It's a blueprint, right? It's not a absolutely formally defined process. And this bleeds through our entire organization and fundamentally displays how we work with our clients, which is, yep, we kind of fit sort of in this box and we're sort of this shape, but you can be, you know, that concept of a square peg and a round hole, we've just got a really big round hole so you can kind of fit any shaped peg in there. And we will help you craft and massage that, but we won't fundamentally force you into a single view of what the world looks like. Okay, so the concept of over delivery is key to any growth business. You know, when you're sitting out there and you're saying that you're going to be different, first slide, you still have an incumbent responsibility to be better and to over deliver. So what we've built internally now is that we set aside 20% of our budgets, and that's both people's time, their energy, and we also sell this into clients' time now. The majority of our client relationships are what we refer to as a retainer. So they'll have 40, 60, 80, 100 hours of service that they've booked in for that month. We will coach them through a process to say 20% of that, we don't know what we're going to do with. Okay, so this is set to the side, and this is going to allow us to innovate. Okay, this is going to allow us to look outside the square, look at new opportunities with you, and always drive fresh net new space. And we're very fortunate that we live in a digital landscape where there is literally always something else that you could be doing. So over delivery is a mindset, but setting yourself up for that success and building out client relationships that give you the opportunity to over deliver, that's been really killer for us. It's a bloody hard sell though. Genuinely, it's a hard sell. And we've struggled with that even more so in the Singaporean market, where a Australian, US, UK relationship tends to be much more heavily biased on trust and reputation. Whereas we find in the Southeast Asian markets, there's a much higher desire to have strong bullet points, absolute clarity of you will be doing this and you will be charging me that. However, with time and with relationships, and we say, look, just give us some time to innovate and brainstorm this with you, and we'll help you move into a different direction. We're slowly breaking down those barriers. Okay, I think I've kind of touched on this. Where you want to get to with any client relationship is trust. So we trust by default, and that's trusting our staff and our clients and our landlords, which has backfired on us. But to get to trust, you have to be authentic in everything that you do. So there's a bit of a Kiwi phrase there of call a spade, and it's literally, if you see something crap, you tell the client it's crap. You show them that they are going down the wrong path. This is not what is best for your business. Now, what that often means for us is that we do the reverse sell. So we quite often recommend products which aren't in the best interest of Overdose. You know, we regularly have clients that will come in for a large piece of software that'll be a couple of $100,000 for an implementation. And you know, myself and Yestin will sit down and say, guys, you just don't need this. Right? There's a much cheaper, smarter, more agile way to take this to market. And you get the feedback, but Todd, we've got the budget for it. So yeah, okay, you've got the budget, but let's not do that tech. Let's keep the budget, but let's spend it in some smarter ways. Okay. So for us, our kind of pitch to our clientele is that we focus on business outcomes first. We don't worry too much about what are the building blocks that got us to the business outcome, but we just need to get to that exact outcome for you. And quite often in there, it's like, let's move some of that cash away from a technical debt and let's kind of massage that into some marketing, some PR, opening up some new territories, okay? So the authenticity can only be delivered with transparency. Now, to really embody that, we actually, and again, going back to our no process only systems, we completely opened our business up to our clientele. Now, what that means is that we have no support desks for what we do. You have direct contact with everybody that is working on your business. So we've got no mystery developer that's tucked away. If your developer is offshore, we have a big team of guys in the Ukraine. That guy is on these chats and he's on the video calls, and it's completely transparent through that process. When we have project management systems, you see exactly the same stuff that we see. Whereas the majority of agencies, there's kind of a back channel and there's a reverse version and there's schneidi comments going in there of, Jesus, why are we doing this? This is a terrible idea. Whereas we decided to say, let's open the doors. Let's have authentic transparency, and that will breed trust. Now, the other part to this is when stuff goes wrong, and we make mistakes, okay? Not a great pitch, but we do. It happens in life. That conversation becomes exponentially harder with time, okay? So I'm sure majority of the guys on here have worked through some kind of project delivery manifesto. And that will typically be a 3, 6, 12 month piece of work. Now, I can absolutely guarantee you that probably only 20–30% of those projects ever get delivered on budget, on time, right? It's incredibly hard to deliver pieces in an agile mindset and deliver on a time set. It's kind of an oxymoron in many senses. However, where we tend to see the market is that the market tends to want fixed price, fixed time guarantees, but then in their actual engagement, they want to be changing the goalposts and, you know, actually, I think the buttons should all be pink, you know, and you start double questioning through there. So that tends to push projects out. Now, the agency fundamentally knows if they're running on time, on budget, before, late, early, whatever it may be. When those projects are running late, your default attitude is, it's okay, we can catch up. It's okay, we can catch up. I'll throw some more resource at it. And you hide the conversation from your client. We have found the absolute reverse because we didn't have a bloody choice, because we chose transparency. So with transparency, we have those tough conversations really early. It means they don't exponentially scale. It means you don't have this massive skeleton coming out of the closet 2 weeks before this ethereal D-Day, which we all agreed to a year ago. And it allows us to work proactively with our clientele to resolve those. Okay, next one, cost focus. So we get this down, as an agency, this concept here of $1 out needs 7 in. Most service-based businesses like ourselves will run somewhere between a 15 to 20% EBITDA line. So that's where that number comes from. And we like all of our staff, all of our management, to understand the dynamics and the economics of our business. So if they particularly choose to say, let's take that client out for a $1,000 lunch and whip out the MOA, that's actually cost you $7,000 worth of services. So this isn't a don't spend money slide. This is a understand why you're spending the money and spend it like it's yours, okay? And I think fundamentally for guys that work in companies and they have a per diem and they have a company credit card, you don't really think about the implications to the net business of your actions of spending that cash. Now, we've given you that per diem because it's there to spend, but don't feel an obligation to spend it, okay? And this is having everyone's focus on that we are on a journey as a collective body of humans on this one business called Overdose. And if you choose to spend money unwisely, then that actually has an impact on other things that we can do. It changes how we can do R&D development. It changes how we can open up new markets. So this isn't be tight. This isn't be restrictive. It's not screw people into the ground. It's be aware, it's be conscious and understand that I am going to spend that money because that makes sense. And I've put my business owner's hat on as I've spent that cash. Now, this is my favorite slide because this is the one thing we look for anyone that applies for a job at Overdose. Accountability is the #1 cat call that we have to have for anybody that joins our organization. Individual accountability is infectious. It breeds like wildfire inside your organization. And I fundamentally challenge anyone to tell me that their favorite person that they work with isn't the person that just gets their shit done, okay? So the guy that always delivers, the guy that you can depend on, the guy you can tap on the shoulder and turn around and say, yeah, I've got 5 minutes for you. That level of accountability becomes infectious, and it actually pushes out those that don't show accountability and are there just to do a job and take their pay packet. Now, I'm not against people who come in and just take their pay packet if they're doing a fantastic job at what they do, but there is that accountability to deliver through there. So part of my mental health struggles is that I have this belief system that everything that goes wrong in our organization is my fault. Okay, so if we have a project which I haven't even been involved with, but has, you know, in that scenario is running a month late, it's fundamentally my fault. I either have not got the right systems in place, I've given too much responsibility to the wrong person, I didn't hire the right guy, we oversold it, we undersold it, right? But at every failure within your organization, there was a point in time that you could have resolved that problem. Now, the problem may have been a time bomb that actually happened 6 months ago when you signed the wrong contract. Okay, but fundamentally, there has to be this internal hubris of not accepting failure and this internal individual accountability. So whenever I see situations, and again, we have seen this, where there is finger pointing, and it wasn't my fault, it was her fault, it was him, he did it, it wasn't me. We have no space for that in our organization. I think it again destroys culture. So as a leader, and I'm assuming the majority of this audience is, of very senior stature, whenever there is a problem in the organization, I never look for someone to pin this on. Now, fundamentally, there are times when someone really cocked up, but I always look internally on myself and what could I have done better in that situation that didn't create that. So it's not this denial of failure, it's the acceptance of failure, but not accepting that the failure is okay. Okay, so it's finding the opportunity to resolve that and not assuming that just because you fired the guy that did mess things up, that means you fixed the scenario. Because actually the problem was that you were the person that hired the wrong guy. So there is a failure in an HR process there of how did you hire the wrong person through there as well. So this is something which keeps me awake at night as well, is just this, and I think it's kind of an entrepreneurial thing, which is this never being content, always finding new opportunities and new areas to either improve what you're doing or grow the business in new angles. And my final one is that passion wins every time. Now, I fundamentally believe that 90% of the business that we close that has facilitated our growth, the most important aspect was passion. There is this symptomatic, weird thing that happens in agency landscapes, which is that people put their awards and their portfolio as their reasons why you should work with us. You should work with us because we look after Samsung and we won Partner of the Year. I think that's absolute crap. I think the reason you have those awards is because you did a really good job then. That doesn't mean you're going to do a great job forward, but it's a good simile. So we view portfolio and awards as door openers, kind of wallet grease hinging, that allows us to get into those interesting conversations. And whenever we're in a pitch environment, we use all of these previous 12 slides of active listening, pausing, showing real intrigue in people's businesses, trying to throw different concepts at their business that they haven't come to you and asked for. And Yestin and I have found this firsthand in the Singapore market. That's been really difficult because people have come to us with a very fixed table of things. We've gone, great, I think you actually need about 80% of those, but I want you to look at this, 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 and this. And they're like, Todd, we didn't ask you to do that. I said, I know you didn't ask us, but I'm really excited about your business. And I think there's an amazing opportunity here. And it's that passion, the desire, and just the love of the work that you're doing and the clients that you're doing it for, which drives that success. And if the passion isn't there, if we are working with a brand where we're going, oh my God, this is just terrible, I can't, I would never buy that product, then we won't take the business. So fundamentally, we now only work with retailers, B2B, and brands. We won't work with people that want to do a drop shipping hustle, right? Which is just about making money. We have to be passionate about the brand and the outcome and the opportunities in there. And this goes down to every individual, and it's the individual energy that fundamentally defines your business, and your business defines your brand, and your brand builds your reputation, and that's where all the value comes from. So that is me, Rachel. I can see some Q&A little poppy-uppy buzzy bits on there. I think what I should do now is stop the share so you get bigger pictures of us.
Thanks, Todd. That was fantastic. Now, just before we start the Q&A, I'd just like to invite Yestin to say a couple of words. I cut him off at the start, and he was just going to introduce his role here in Singapore and how Overdose operates in Singapore. So I'll hand to you, Yestin, and then we'll jump into, we've got a few questions there.
Great, thanks Rachel and Monica and NZTE for having us, and also Todd for talking through the founder's mindset. I actually heard these on my second day with the company 6 months ago in Auckland, and I still find them super inspiring actually. So Hopefully you guys do too. Obviously, thank you for all the positive feedback so far. So Overdose in Singapore, we've actually been here for just over 2 years as Overdose. And prior to that, it was actually an acquisition. And prior to that, most of the team has been in the market for 8 years or more. And we work across a range of clients here. I think Rachel alluded to this at the start, but we really work across kind of all elements of the online and digital purchase funnel. So from helping you find your consumers, understand your consumers, through to kind of converting them into potential customers, and then converting them into actual customers and ideally repeat customers. So within that, it's everything from kind of SEO, SEM, social commerce, CRO, CRM, through to actual platform builds and retention. And some of our kind of, I suppose some of our key clients at the moment would be courts, Samsung, got a couple of government clients who obviously we can't talk about, and a couple of kind of smaller SME clients here and there, and a few clients that hopefully I'll be able to announce in the not too distant future. But much like the rest of the company, it's a real cross section of different types of business here in Singapore and the wider region. So shall we move on to the Q&A?
Yes. No. So we've got a few questions. There's some quite long ones. Maybe if I try and condense them down a little bit and ask them, but we'll start at the top. One for you, Todd. Have you got some references for your point of view on process and systems? I think they're looking for maybe real life examples of why you don't work with rigid systems.
I have a good one for this, Todd, unless you've got one ready-made. Oh, Todd, you're on mute. I should have just kept talking, shouldn't I? I could have got away with that.
The one thing I was going to say there, the most valuable tool we have in our organization is Slack. So we do nearly all of our communication through Slack. We have not eliminated email, but we have all of our clients, all of our partners, all of our platforms, all of our staff, everyone is in Slack. I think we pay about $5,000 a month now because we have so many users in there. So that as a tool set fundamentally breeds out some of the process as well, because instead of you fundamentally logging a ticket and being stuck in a very rigid structured project management flow, we have a chat, we talk, and we talk in an instant view, and it allows you to talk in colloquialisms rather than formatting a whole email. And so to get the response of, how would you do this? I think this is broken. It's a quick fire response as opposed to having to embed everything into one system structure. The other one, I expect this person's coming from a systems background. We recently changed our project management systems. When we first started, we put a system called Jira in, Atlassian product. This is your Rolls Royce of project management. It's a huge gargantuan system, and developers absolutely love it. We found that was making us very robotic in how we were working. So we pulled that out, and for about 3 years, we lived our life inside Trello. So really simple project management, just swim lanes, moving the tasks across. It was very visual. It was very simple to use. That got us through to around about 60, 80, 100 staff. We then got to a point of where Trello was just holding us back. So we did a big project of looking at which systems fitted into our culture, allowed us to do resource planning. That was one of the biggest issues we were having with scale, because you couldn't see everything that was happening. So we needed a little bit more process in there. After a long selection process, we chose a tool called Wrike, W-R-I-K-E, and our clients and our team absolutely love this piece of software. So if you're looking for project management pieces of kit, go out there and have a look at Wrike. It's a great piece of kit. Yes,
cool. Did you want to jump in, Easton?
Yeah, just on that particular point, I think there's a few questions around, how we kind of handle this, this notion of kind of systems over process and kind of individual accountability. And I think certainly having spent 20 years in fairly traditional digital agencies, this is one of the big changes for me, in that you spend an inordinate amount of time trying to put processes in place to stop things going wrong and to stop people failing or stop systems failing or whatever. But usually then that becomes the entire focus instead of actually empowering people to make these things a success. It's a huge shift. It enables everything to happen more quickly, and it enables everything to happen to a higher standard because everyone is invested in delivering the best possible outcome. It's really has been quite eye-opening for me. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yep.
What I would say, and I think Yestin's view there as doing 20 years at normal agencies and then coming into Overdose of, oh my God, you're not organized. It's like, yeah, we know we're not organized, and it's brilliant, right? Because it breeds freedom and expression in everything that we do. A lot of these things sound and feel quite counterintuitive, but it plays incredibly well into the psychology of delivery. And it comes back to accountability of, if we're not going to be a rigid, fixed, organized business, then you have to be personally accountable to make that work. So it's actually incredibly empowering for your staff to say, you are the system. It's you're the system, not the software. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we've got another question here on process, and asking about what's that sweet spot? How do you know you found that sweet spot between process and innovation and being involved?
Oh, I don't think you can ever really quantify that, Rachel. I don't think there's a barometer or a metric on there. I'd say, for myself, I look at the energy levels of both my clients and my staff. So I'm looking for, how excited are they when they've just come out of that meeting? Is the passion still there? Or are they really frustrated that they're having to go down a different path? But on the flip side, we can't run an organization purely for our staff because we're a service industry. We have to run it for our clients. So we are constantly talking to our clientele as well and ensuring that they're enjoying the ride with us and they're getting that balance of the commercial outcomes, but fundamentally enjoying the relationship with us as well. So I think it's a finger in the air kind of thing, Rachel, right? It's a
bit of gut feel there.
It is. It's feeling your way through it. And also having the bloody tough conversations of, I will always call a client probably more when we've made a mistake than when we've had a success, right? And it's straight away addressing that and then calling them a week afterwards. Are you still good? Have we got to the right place? So it's never avoiding those difficult conversations.
Yeah. Now there's another one here, which I think you actually might have answered, but yeah, specifically when you're selecting your target customers, do you consider the chemistry between Overdose and that customer? So if you're approached by a company or a potential client that didn't gel with your culture, would you bother with them, or would you just go after other clients that are a better fit?
I mean, I think we're oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, it's really interesting because that is a really hard thing to judge until you've had a couple of conversations. So we have some clients that you would look off the bat and think they are going to be the dullest, most corporate, painful client in the world. But you meet the people in there and they're amazing, right? On the flip side, you'll then pick up a, hot fashion brand and you think this will be a banger. And you try to work with those people and they've come from an environment which doesn't gel with us in the slightest. So you can never pick it on the surface. It needs several conversations. I also think that, when we've got a mature office, and if you looked at, our Auckland team is 45 people. Yestin's team in Singapore is 7 or 8 guys. The ability to pick and choose your customer kind of changes with where you're at economically in each of those markets as well. So, as you're starting up, scaling up in new markets, you sometimes have to put some of your philosophies to the side to make the economics work for you. When you're in a more mature location like Auckland, where we would have, we will get approached probably 3 to 4 times a week to take on new clients. And we can look at them, half of them obviously not the right fit. And then we're in a generous position where it's not that we choose, but it's just saying, can we deliver success for these guys? And is everyone excited by this journey? Yes, then slightly different attitude I expect in Singapore, where you're still kind of scraping together a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're the door's always open, and we're kind of always trying to put our best foot forward. But I think to add to that, it becomes a kind of self-regulating system in a way, because if we work with someone and we spend a lot of time maybe saying, actually, you don't need to do this, spend less money with us, spend more money over here, or we're putting forward different ways of doing things that we fundamentally believe are the right thing for them to do for their business. If those conversations aren't well received, we tend not to work together again beyond the immediate project anyway. So it almost kind of takes care of itself, and then the clients that are receptive to that and we do gel well with then become kind of long-term clients.
And we have sacked clients as well, Rachel. That's a thing, where we've been in relationships with clients for a couple of years where they love everything that we do, but the relationship is just never quite there, and they've never quite broken that client vendor relationship, and we always try to gravitate towards a partnership. I think that's a heavily overly used and contentious word now, but if you're not enjoying it, you're never going to do your best work. It's pretty fundamental, and we're in a creative space, so the passion has to come through in the delivery.
Got another question here on the accountability piece. So how does individual accountability not breed micromanagement? So if it's potentially all your fault and you're not checking with every team member all the time what they're doing, how does it make the team own their own mistakes?
So on micromanagement, definitely not. We are quite the opposite of that. We have a very, very flat management team. So actually it's the antithesis. Accountability breeds less management, because we feel the need that we don't need to manage you as much. Also because we default to trust. Now, I think with any organization of with 2 layers of management in there, shit floats uphill in our organization. So what tends to happen, Rachel, is that I get to find out all of the bad news rather than all of the good news. Okay, so success has become a natural for our team, where our clients are paying for success. That's essentially what we sell. So if we have said we will spend $1,000 and we expect to make you 10, that's the expectation. That's not actually a win. That's actually the expectation. So what then comes to me is not when they've made 15, it's when they've made 5. Okay. So therefore I get to see those failures. I don't react to every one of them. And I trust that, that a lot of the time when the team are communicating their failures, they're actually communicating the next steps forward for that as well. Of, we did X, Y occurred, we are now going to do Z to fix this situation. So again, what accountability breeds is that you've got to show me the outcome to move out of that position as well. It's a fine balance. So don't just give me problems. I can probably find most of the answers, but we want our staff to own the outcome to those answers as well. And also we don't, very rarely is there a chastising of staff for failure. As long as that failure has been driven with the correct view. As an aside on that, one of the more awkward parts there is when a client has asked you to do a piece of work where you have cautiously said, we will do it, but I don't think it's the right move, right? We think it's, this is a hedge, this is 50-50, and then that work fails and they like to blame you. Because it's really easy to go back to your boss and say, this bloody agency I hired, they were useless. They did this piece of work and it never worked. And it's like, you asked us to do that. You absolutely convinced us that this was the right way. So again, concept of accountability needs to bleed into that relationship with the client as well. But as a service provider, you're always going to get blamed somewhere along that value chain.
Yeah, this leads nicely actually into our next question around team culture again. So the person who's asking the question says, sounds like a high energy, fast environment that you operate in. How do you stop and actually celebrate that success when you have it?
So personally, terrible at it. I think it's an entrepreneurial trait that you wear failure. And we I personally don't stop to celebrate success. We have a phenomenally high close rate when we're pitching for work. So we close at around about 75%. So 3 out of 4 pitches, we will tend to have a positive outcome there. I will wear the 1 out of the 4 that we didn't win and analyze the crap out of that rather than celebrating the 3 that we did win. Now that actually caused some stress inside our organization. And so what we've done with that now is that each of our offices has their own managing director, and they are responsible for owning and driving and growing the culture in those offices. So now as a team, we do celebrate a lot. Work stops at 4 p.m. every Friday. So everyone either has a beer, or in Singapore, it tends to be more coffees and teas. But essentially everyone gets an hour to sit down and share those successes. We use Slack a lot as well. So we have lots of town hall meetings where we bring everyone together internationally and share those successes. As I say, the methodology for sharing success kind of changes between each office. For those on the line that are Kiwis, it tends to involve alcohol. Singapore might be bring a cake, but we do share those successes. And when we were a smaller organization, we actually used to share all of our financial successes as well. So we used to pay out pretty regular bonuses to our staff. In the last 18 months, we haven't done that because we decided to take the business international, and that cash flow was very vital for us to opening up new markets. It is on the radar, though, that we're going to be putting in an employee share scheme within the next period, just in case any of my staff are listening. I'm not going to guarantee a date, but we do want to give back to our staff, and we've already done that with our management team. So we have 16 shareholders in Overdose. I started with 80% of the company. I have diluted myself down to 40%. Brought in 14 other shareholders, founders, and that's the entire management team. So, and what that means is someone like Yestin gets to grow a Singapore office, benefit off of his P&L and bonus structure, but now also has equity in the parent group company as well. So everyone's aligned with that success. And I think it's a cautious tale for combining celebrating success as a team versus monetary reward. And I think that's cultural across different offices. There's a balance between going out and having a great night, but I still feel underpaid for the work that I was done, right? And then there's the version of, here's $5,000 cash, yeah, cheers, bye, right? Got to find that middle ground in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we'll finish on, there's a question here from Germany that we'll finish on, and it's Overdose appeared
in New Zealand, Rachel.
What's that?
It's getting dark here in
New
Zealand.
You're opening your curtains.
Yes.
You'll be in black before we know it. So Overdose appeared on this person's radar in Germany through the I-18N campaign. I'm not sure I know about that. But how do you manage, as you're growing internationally, not to lose sight of your mindset?
Yeah, so I've no idea what I-18N is. I'm looking at that same question. I think you might mean LinkedIn. We did an interesting campaign where, whilst we were all in lockdown, we recorded a video, which was essentially reaching out to the rest of the world to open up new offices. So a lot of our growth has been biased to me surrounding myself with fantastic people. Right? Okay, so Overdose isn't me. I set the vision, I had the concept, and I still drive that growth. But fundamentally, it's an incredible group of team who deliver on that. So when we were looking to open up into new markets, we put a call out basically saying, who wants to join us? I had probably 30 or 40 people that hit me up off the back of that, who were entrepreneurs at different stages of their careers. And in fact, here's an interesting stat, Rachel. Only one female reached out to us. So globally, only one female reached out to us and then didn't turn up for the interview that we'd set up for her.
Well, that's disappointing.
It is disappointing. I can also share with you that when we were hiring for Yestin's role in Singapore, we had 105 applications and only 2 female applications
Also disappointing.
So it's very difficult when you're trying to build that diversity across your leadership team. We need more women in what we do. And, you know, so we have a female managing director in Auckland and in Melbourne, and it keeps the rest of us boys in check, and they add a different perspective, a different attitude. I actually think that from a appreciation of retail, many female leaders are actually stronger. You know, there is a 60-40 bias to who actually spends the money online. You know, e-commerce is a female-led consumer group, right? So anyway, that to the side. When we are looking to open up in new territories, we are fundamentally not necessarily looking at the location, we're looking at that individual. We're looking at that person, okay? So the process that we go through is I will meet nearly everyone, because you can never judge someone by their LinkedIn. And we found some people that we thought would be a meh, but were just, oh my God, he's amazing. And some people that we thought were going to be a slam dunk was just, oh God, that was a really boring conversation. I didn't get excited by it. So we have a chat. We literally talk to people, and they have to share our energy and our passion and our desire to do good things. First of all, they have to want it. That's got to be backed up by the capability to do the delivery as well. But it all starts with the individual. And sometimes that's an acquisition where we'll go and acquire a little agency of 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. And sometimes it's an individual who's just, I want to start Overdose in Germany. And that's actually a thing that we agreed just last night. So we will be opening up in Germany on August 1st. So we've got a chap in Berlin who came through that process. And we've been speaking to people in Berlin, Paris, Oslo, London, Dublin, Canada. And my biggest challenge now as a CEO is to scale agility. That's my biggest challenge now, is how do I take this pockets of culture that we've built and do that at scale? So I don't know the answer to that question, and I'm working it out. And that's what excites me. What excites me is the not knowing and always challenging myself with something fresh and exciting to do. And the concept of working out, how do we make Overdose work in Oslo? Man, that just, you know, that gives me goosies, right? Because I don't know. And if I don't know, I'm pumped to go and solve the puzzle.
And actually, so one final question. I think we've got someone here who wants to come and work for you. Do you guys have a yearly staff evaluation?
Do you know what? Do you remember when Netflix put out that really interesting piece where they deliberately released the bottom 15 or 20% of their staff every year? Do you remember reading that? So that's the Netflix HR strategy, right? Which is this kind of hyper Americanized, super competitive baseball league style of running a company. Which
Name
is
and
that,
shame.
yeah, which is that even if everyone in my organization is a 8 out of 10, they will always release the bottom 10, 20% of staff every year, because that's the only way that you can continue to grow, right? Now, I think that's brutal and savage, but it's actually kind of logical as well, which is that if you're going to move forward, you need to have change, right? And you don't know if there is a better space. You don't know if the grass is greener. You don't know if you've actually hit your peak capability. So what I've also found is that, especially in a startup culture, we've had guys who, you know, still know their employee number. I was number 2, I was number 1, right? And those are guys who fundamentally have a place in our heart, and we have a very big soft spot for, because they took big pay cuts to come and work for us, and they're part of the furniture. They're fundamentally part of the DNA of our culture. And I think that there is a tough balance there between maintaining a performance mindset and overly falling in love with some of the staff just because they've been loyal to you as well. So look, we aren't anywhere near as savage or brutal as a Netflix. We also don't have any investors in the business. So we aren't accountable to hit an exact number where you start carving off staff because you have to deliver an EBIT number for your stock price or for your investors. So we have that flexibility, but we certainly do manage our staff through their career. the most important part here is that it's the obligation of our team and our staff to tell us where they want to get to, right? It's not my job to show you what your career could be. It's your job to tell me where do you want to get to, and then it's our role to facilitate that growth for you. So you have to want it. You have to have that vision. And if you haven't found that vision yet, we need to do some deeper digging. I know, Yestin, you probably have a more formal process that I don't get involved with.
Not really, actually. I don't know if I should admit that, but not really, no. I think just to echo that, really, it's kind of, yeah, we do something once a year, and that's really, I guess, twofold. You know, there's obviously stuff around, you know, kind of title and package and so on, but also there's, you know, what do people want to do next? What do they want to learn more about? What do they want to move into? What do they want to do less of? So it's as much about kind of performance as it is about like career development. And in it, and I genuinely mean career development beyond just what they're doing at Overdose. You know, where do they want to be in 5 years' time? And if that isn't with Overdose, how can we kind of help them get there as well? But it's pretty informal. You know, there's not kind of weighty spreadsheets and calculations and so on. Because I think if you get the culture right, people kind of know what the conversation is going to be when they go into it anyway.
I think that's fundamentally correct, is that if you are building a process to manage HR and performance, again, you're starting to roboticize your staff again, you know. But if you had the culture right and everyone was just accelerating through, you don't need that. But I don't know the formula for it. I just know that we've kind of got it. And you just keep massaging it every day, Rachel.
Sounds like a good place to be. Hey, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Todd and Yestin, thank you so much for your time today. And Todd, thanks for taking us through that founder's mindset. I wanted to pick one or two kind of key takeouts for me, but honestly, all 13 of those principles really resonated. And yeah, I think most businesses, if they started adopting half of them, would be in a fantastic place. So yeah, look, thanks so much. And for everyone here, we will make the recording available and send it out, and you can watch again at your leisure. So yeah, thanks so much, Todd.
Thanks for having us.
I just also want to pop up there, can we get the slides? If you go onto my LinkedIn page, Todd Welling, they are on my LinkedIn, and I'll post them up on the Overdose LinkedIn page as well.
Perfect.
And please feel free to distribute throughout your whole company. It's public.
Cool. Yeah, we'll share on our channels as well.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Chat soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Yes, sir.
Bye.